Bread Brothers, and today I'm going to be making some bread pudding. If your family's like mine, you really love homemade bread, but my family is pretty snobby about eating bread that's past 1 or 2 days old, and so I've kind of been collecting bread for about maybe 2 weeks and just throwing it in the fridge whenever it's past its prime. And so I'm going to cut these up into small pieces and get them ready to become a new configuration of awesomeness. So I'm going to start by cutting these into pieces that are about 1 inch square. Okay, so before I grease my baking dish, I just want to make sure that I have a good amount of bread. I obviously had more than I needed, so I didn't use the artisan bread. I just used some French bread buns that I had made a while ago, as well as some sourdough loaves. So I'm going to take those and put those into this bowl here. And set that aside for a minute. It's really important that you grease your pan. I did this once without greasing it and it was a disaster. Everything stuck. So make sure that you grease your pan either with like a Crisco or butter or a spray pan. Okay, now that my pan is heavily buttered there, I'm going to start mixing up a few ingredients that go into helping to create a great amalgamation of this. I had a friend that dropped by some beautiful eggs, so we're going to use 6 of these eggs, 1 teaspoon of salt, actually 2 teaspoons of salt, 3/4 cup of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter, with 3 cups of milk. So I should have mentioned that this is it measures 8 by 8 from the bottom or 9 by 9 from the top, and it's a little bit deeper. So if you're using a Pyrex dish, it may not hold as much. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to measure the bread before you start pouring it in. So I have my mixture here of the eggs and the milk and the sugar and all of that. And I'm just going to pour that now over the top of this. It is important that the bread be stale. Fresh bread is not nearly as thirsty as a little bit older bread. There's really only a few things that old bread is good for, but this is one of my favorites. Of course, it's good for French toast and for feeding the ducks, but bread pudding is a great way to use up your old bread. Stuffing is also another great one. But this is all nicely mixed and not really saturated, but covered. And we're just going to pour that now into, if you don't like mixing this with your hands, totally use a wooden spoon. And tuck that all in, and you kind of just smash it down. The weight of it will kind of help it to settle, but this will just make sure that it's going to come out in one big piece rather than be crumbly at all. Okay, I'm going to bake this now in the oven at 350 degrees for 50 minutes. A lot of people put a custard sauce on top of their bread pudding, which is great, but I like caramel sauce even better. So today we're going to make the real good stuff. So to do that, we're going to start with 2 cups of brown sugar and 1/2 cup of water. And I'm going to put this on the stove and get it to boil. You can see that brown sugar immediately begins to break down. I'm going to put that on to boil and create a syrup out of it before I add some other ingredients. So you can totally do this with white sugar if you want, but I just like the flavor of brown sugar in my caramel sauce a little bit better. It's a little bit more caramely, and it's immediately the right color for caramel sauce. So we're just gonna let this boil for a couple minutes. Get it to boil and then let it boil for a couple minutes. Okay, so this has been boiling now for just a couple of minutes. The sugar is really well dissolved. It's become, I wouldn't say clear, but you can see to the bottom of the pan. And to this I'm going to add 1 cup of butter. Melt that in. It's already turning into a really nice caramel sauce just with that. So I've turned off the heat and I'm just going to let that sit and cool now while we wait for the bread pudding to bake. Okay, so it's been 50 minutes and this is looking really awesome. And the caramel sauce is also cooled down, and I'm just going to pour that into the pitcher so you can see it's nice and brown and yummy. I can't wait to eat this. I'm going to let this cool for about 10 minutes and then I'll cut into it and so you can see what it looks like inside. So I'm just going to cut this into, I don't know, 9 to 12 pieces here. So it's crispy on the outside and should be nice and moist and gooey on the inside. Some people like to put cinnamon in this. Because I did the caramel sauce, I didn't use any cinnamon this time. But feel free to use cinnamon if you like. I obviously like lots of caramel sauce. And let's give it a taste. My mouth is already watering. Man, you know, I used to think that bread pudding was for old people, but now that I'm getting a little bit older, I love it. It's amazing. And this recipe is really easy, obviously. It's great use of older bread, and I encourage you to give it a try and let me know. I think in that corner you can comment, and in that corner you can subscribe. If that doesn't work, find out where you can do that. We'd love to hear from you and answer any questions you might have. And please bake bread, be happy.